We're at the Scottsdale Civic Center Library today for the Republican Jewish Coalition's CD9 Congressional Candidates Debate. Western Free Press will bring you reports from the debate and individual interviews with as many candidates as we can catch up with.
Our moderator today is Seth Leibsohn, president of the Leibsohn Group, a premier policy and communications firm headquartered here in Arizona. Seth has counseled and written speeches for national candidates and former cabinet officials. For the past several years, Seth served as chief of staff to the former education secretary, William J. Bennett, with whom he co-authored the book, The Fight of Our Lives, Knowing the Enemy, Speaking the Truth, and Choosing to Win the War Against Radical Islam. If you have friends or family who are still skeptical that there is a threat from Islamism, this is the book that you want to give them. Seth is a senior fellow with the Claremont Institute and former vice president of the think tank Empower America. So recently, Seth, along with Tom Brown, I'm not sure if he's here, launched a talk show here in the Valley on KKNT 960, which is the Phoenix home of Dennis Prager, Michael Medved, and Hugh Hewitt. You can hear Arizona politics and culture with Seth Leibsohn and Tom Brown Sundays from 6 to 8. That's Sunday, 6 o'clock, KKNT 960 AM. You can tune in tonight and hear Seth interview constitutional scholar John Eastman and Superintendent of Public Instruction John Huppenthal. Seth?
Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Candidates, thank you to the Republican Coalition. When I'm privileged to be in front of a Republican audience for a citizen event, an election event, I like to quote our first Republican president to kind of set the tone of what I think we all believe, candidates, people in the audience alike, and that was Abraham Lincoln, who said, "We love our country, partly because it is our own country, but mostly because it is a free country. And we burn with a zeal for its advancement, prosperity, and glory, because we see in such the advancement, prosperity, and glory of human liberty, of human right, and of human nature. We desire the prosperity of our countrymen, partly because they are our countrymen, but chiefly to show the world that free men can be prosperous." I think a line like that represents the candidates, all of them that we're going to hear from tonight. I know it represents the Republican Jewish Coalition. Without further ado, and hearing much from me, I'll just turn it straight to the candidates for their opening remarks, and we'll just go from our left, yes, from our right to that way left, meaning nothing more than that geographically. So we'll start with you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Lisa Borowski, a proud member of your Scottsdale City Council for any Scottsdale residents that we have in here. I started my first term 3.5 years ago now, so I'm in the final phase of my first term. It's been quite the experience, and it's been a real treat. I take pride in the work that I've done for the citizens of Scottsdale, and I'm looking forward to continuing to represent them, at least the southern half, in a different capacity. By way of background, I'm a native of the Valley. I was actually born at St. Joe's Hospital, which is in the now District 9. I was raised primarily in central Phoenix for a little bit, and then in Scottsdale most of my life. I am raising a beautiful little girl here, what is in her school. She goes to school in District 9, and I'm a practicing attorney. I went to law school at St. John's University in New York, and I've been practicing for a little over 15 years. I'm also, I should mention, a graduate of ASU. I have a deep commitment to my community and a real passion for the issues that I see coming before us. I believe certainly I've become much more involved and passionate since I became elected 4 years ago, but I think our country is going in a very, very dangerous direction. And the reason I'm running is because I feel compelled to do that. I feel compelled to step up and continue to make the tough decisions that I've been making over the past 4 years on behalf of the citizens. I My primary area of practice is litigation, and that has prepared me for an approach to rational thinking, making quick decisions, although well thought out and factually supported. And I believe that I am the best person for the job because I have a real world approach to solving problems, and I make decisions based on the best interests of the people that I represent, that is the taxpayers. I don't fall victim, and I have a 4-year track record to demonstrate this, to support this. I do not fall victim to either bureaucrats that are continually asking for more money, i.e. more taxes, more of your money, or special interest groups that continue to want to move elected officials in directions that are not in the best interest of taxpayers or citizens. I see a time card, 15 seconds, sorry. I'm looking forward to making a real difference. I think this is a critical election year. We all know that. I am the candidate that can step up and win the general election, I believe, and I hope you'll support me through the primary.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hello, my name is Leah Campo-Shandelbauer, and I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I recently left a career serving at CIA. For over a decade, I served as an operations officer in the Central Intelligence Agency, working and living abroad, undercover, conducting operations. And I held that position because I feel very passionately about the security of our country. And I felt that that was a position where I could most effectively do my part for our nation's security. But then over the years, over the last 3.5 years actually, something began to change, which sort of changed my thinking. I began to hear, coming out of the White House, the same type of divisive class warfare rhetoric that I had grown accustomed to hearing coming out of the mouths of tin horn dictators like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. And it was coming out of the White House. It became clear to me that President Obama, through this rhetoric, was intent on taking our country down a path toward a European-style social democracy, a system that gives its citizens, well, Europe now, and learned helplessness, rather than keeping us firmly on track on a free enterprise system, a system that I believe truly uplifts the human spirit and gives every human, every citizen of this country the true dignity that comes from defining and earning your success. Coupled with that, I felt that our political class seemed incapable of coming up with new ideas to get us out of the partisan rut we were in, or better yet, a rousing defense of the old ideas that I feel this country was founded upon and that suit us best. So I'm here to offer something different. I'm centering my campaign on a full-throated defense of the morality of the free enterprise system, because I believe that it is that system alone that will get us out of the current cultural and economic slump we find ourselves in right now. So a little bit of background about me. I'm the wife and mother of 4. My husband Alfred is currently serving in Afghanistan. He'll be there for the coming year. I come from a military family. My father was enlisted in the Air Force for nearly 30 years, taking my family all over the world, and then right back here to Arizona, where I grew up from junior high all the way through my college days at ASU. And I just want to end with just one thought, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Ronald Reagan once said that our freedom and our liberty were never more than a generation away from extinction. We don't pass it to our children through our bloodlines. We have to fight for it and we have to defend it. So what I say to you today is that if I'm to be your next Congresswoman, I will spend my time and my votes defending our liberties and our economic freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the Republican Jewish Coalition for hosting us today. It's an outstanding forum. I've been to one before, and it was with Congressman Quayle and Congressman Schweikert. A lot of fun, a lot of good questions, and I hope we get a lot of the same. I'm Travis Grantham. I'm running for Congress in the newly created 9th Congressional District. I'm a conservative Republican, a constitutional conservative Republican, something we don't hear enough of these days. My beautiful wife Tricia is sitting in front, and I'd like her to get a round of applause for coming today. She's suffering from a fracture in the foot. I would ask her to get up, but So a little bit about me. I'm a third-generation Arizonan. I grew up here in Scottsdale. I'm a proud husband, a proud father. We have 2 daughters, 7 and 4. I'm a business owner. We own an airplane company at the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, and I'm a National Guard pilot. I'm an officer, a captain. I just found out I got promoted to major, which is exciting, and I serve at the 161st Air Refueling Wing. I fly a KC-135. And I can tell you that we all get asked why we're running. And that's really what this comes down to in an introduction. Why are you running for Congress? The single biggest threat to this nation today, even first to radical Islam, which is coming in a very close second, is the debt. You know, this country is $16 trillion in debt. We're spending 40% more than we take in. It's growing by 6% per year. And our economy struggles to grow at 2 to 3% per year. It's an unsustainable proposition. We have a stagnant economy. We have a bureaucratic nightmare in this country that is strangling job creators from doing what they do best, creating jobs. You know, I'm glad in the intro we brought up energy. I served as Chief Operations Officer at International Air Response for 8 years. We cleaned up the Gulf oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. I was there off and on throughout a 95-day process where I saw President Obama's policies and his administrator's policies at the EPA completely shut down a cleanup operation, make a spill 10 times worse than it needed to be environmentally, and drive 11 platforms out of the Gulf of Mexico to Middle Eastern waters where they are producing today and selling back to us at a premium. And we wonder why we're paying $4 a gallon or whatever it's going to be in the coming years at the pump. And our foreign policy is in shambles. And I hope we talk a lot about foreign policy today because there are some stark differences up here. We have a president who's more concerned with Israel striking Iran than he is with Iran's buildup of a nuclear weapon. It makes no sense. And anybody who tells you Iran's not building up a nuclear weapon is wrong. I was just over there. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I look forward to discussing the issues. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. My name is Vernon Parker, and I am a candidate for Congressional District Number 9. Just a little bit about me. I was raised by my grandmother in an area that was replete with drugs, gangs, and violence. And my grandmother, she taught me something. She taught me the importance of the American dream. And I'll never forget, night after night, she would say, "Would you read the Bible to me?" And I would always wonder why she couldn't do it. And she would tell me, she goes, "I want your life to be a lot better than what I had." And when I graduated, well, when I was accepted into Georgetown University's law school, I didn't have the resources. So at 75 years of age, she started cleaning houses to help get me there. When I graduated, she was so proud. That was the American dream. When I served as a special assistant to President George H.W. Bush in the White House, she was so proud because that was the American dream. When I was unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate as an assistant secretary, she was proud because that was the American dream. When I became the mayor of Paradise Valley, she was proud because that was the American dream. And she said to me, the American dream is that if you work hard enough, you can be whoever you want to be. Never let anyone confine you. And I look today. I have a son who's 18 years old, just graduated. He does not have the same opportunities. He will not be able to participate in the same opportunities. Why? Because we have a president today who has increased our debt in 3.5 years by $5 trillion. We have a president today who has imposed upon us socialized medicine. Obamacare is not about health care. Obamacare is about freedom. It is about freedom. It is about freedom for the American people that has been taken away from us. And when I get to Congress, I can guarantee you one thing. I won't be enamored by walking down the halls. The speaker is not going to be a big fellow to me because I've walked the halls of Congress. I've parked on West Exec Drive. I will be able to hit the ground running. And I can guarantee you one thing, we will bring this country's greatness back, and we will restore the greatness of this country. And the other thing that I would just like to part with is this. Having grown up where I grew up, I have this one saying that when the government handouts become a government handcuff, we must get away from them. And I'll close by the words of the great President Ronald Reagan when he said, "We are a nation with a government, not the other way around." All right.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for having us here. I'm Martin Sepulveda. I'm running for Congress in this district because it's my home. I live in the district, and I was raised here. My family's been part of this community since the 1870s when they homesteaded at Rural University in Tempe. I'm an ACU graduate. I met my wife there. We raised our family in Chandler. I started my first business there, and I was elected twice to the Chandler City Council. I'm also a military guy. I enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 17. I'm now 52. I'm a commander in the Navy Reserves. My assignment's with SEAL Team 17 in Coronado, a Reserve SEAL team. I'm a combat vet. I've seen some of the best and some of the worst that happens in war. Each time I've come back to Arizona, I vowed to do whatever I could to make my home a better place. I care deeply about this community, our state, and our nation. I'm a small business owner. I've got over 20 years of experience in public and private sector. Before I started my company, I worked for McCarthy Construction, a very large multinational construction company. Before that, I was at the Arizona Department of Commerce. So those 20 years of public and private sector experience, my takeaway is this. Government doesn't create jobs. The best it could do is create conditions for success. A reasonable regulatory environment, a predictable and competitive tax environment, and get out of the way. Let the private sector create jobs and wealth. That's what they do best. The 2 terms I served in the Chandler City Council, they're non-consecutive terms. I tell you that because I'm not a career politician. It's great tours of duty, both of them. What we did on that council was important. We balanced every budget, we had cash reserves, we even lowered taxes. We're accountable. The other thing we did of significance was this. We engaged the private sector. The best success story in this state is Intel. We're fortunate to have them in Chandler. Their first expansion was 1996, my first term on the council, $2 billion, about 1,000 jobs. They're still expanding today. Their total capital investment in Chandler is over $15 billion and almost 10,000 primary employees. That's what government needs to do at every level, engage the private sector. Our campaign is focused on 2 things primarily, jobs and economy, and the debt and deficit spending. A couple weeks ago, we introduced a 5-point jobs creation plan based on the real world, free market conditions, not something that I came up with, but a bunch of people helped with this thing. It's real. Again, not being a career politician, so many things aren't going to be very popular, but they have to happen. They have to happen. So I encourage you to look at that, and maybe we'll get to talk about some of that this afternoon. The other thing is debt and deficit spending. We've got to pay attention to that. It's already been said many times here, and will be said many times more. The President of Congress doesn't pay attention to debt and deficit spending. Is more dangerous to our sovereignty as Americans than any foreign military. So I look forward to the conversation this afternoon, and thank you again for coming.
Hi, I'm Jeff Thompson. Can you hear me like this? I'm the newest candidate in the race. I've only been in the race 5 weeks. I'm not a politician. I've never had any political aspirations. I'm a retired businessman. I, like Martin, I'm one of the 2 males that live in the district. I've lived in the district 31 years. I've raised my 3 kids in this district. Lived in Ahwatukee the whole time. Been married for 36 years. Have a wonderful wife. She's a retired school teacher. And typically right now I spend my summers in Flagstaff. And like the other candidates have said, and they're right, I think this is the most important election in my lifetime. And I didn't want to sit on the sidelines and vote for another politician because the politicians have caused this mess. For all the reasons candidates said, and the spending is out of control. Congress has a huge appetite for spending your tax dollars. And I was a partner in a $150 billion corporation. And I sat in those conference rooms, and I had to make tough decisions, and I had to bring sides together. And the decisions we made determined our employment and the employment of people in our organization. And if we made bad decisions, I wouldn't have worked there very long, because the people that made bad decisions were gone. I retired early. I retired when I was 54. You, your family, your friends, you're very important to me. I'm proud to be an American. My dad was a World War II Navy veteran. This country's gone through rough times before. I think back to the days of our revolution. Our founding fathers, I mean, if they hadn't pulled that off, they'd have probably all been hung. I think this is a special time, and it requires special people. Who are the people, if we're going to pull out of this, who are the people that are going to rise to the forefront and become great leaders and lead this country in the direction it has to go? I've got that experience. I've got successful business experience, many years of it. And the best predictor of future success is past success. And that was drilled into me many, many years in the business community. You know, like Ken Wisenhut said of the Cardinals, if you're looking for potential, that means they haven't done much. You're looking for people that are experienced, successful leaders, people that care about you, care about your family, care about your friends, and are willing to draw a line in the sand and do what's right. I know a lot about the business world, and I'll tell you what, I know a lot about healthcare. I know more about healthcare than 99% of the people in Washington, D.C., and yes, Obamacare is wrong. There are a few good provisions into it. For those of you that heard me speak the other night, you know I know a lot about healthcare. I'm the person who can go back there, get involved in that, and fix it and make it affordable. Thanks so much for inviting us and coming tonight. Look forward to answering your questions.
Each and every one of you. We're doing well. We know we're doing well because we all kept within the time limit, and no one has used their rebuttal cards yet. We have, as Amy said, 4 categories. Not yet. And we'll have one question, 90-second answer for each one of these. We'll start with the economy. The question will just continue this pattern. Start with Lisa. Henry Nothaf, the economist, and others have pointed out what countries we compete with, like China, do to incentivize building plants in those countries. They throw land at private corporations.
We can't hear.
Speak into the mic.
They'll even pay for the employers. How do we compete with that? How do we keep jobs in America in this increasing competitive world, especially when we're facing countries that, because of their socialized policies, are able to actually endow employment in those countries? How do we compete and keep jobs here?
Thank you very much. Well, it's no secret that we have corporations, moving their operations offshore because we have a very insecure business climate currently. I think, first of all, I'm not big on subsidies or financial incentives for private business. So that's something I'm completely opposed to. Throwing money at private sector business, throwing taxpayer money toward private sector business is not something I'm in favor of. But how we have citizens that are dedicated, hardworking citizens, built on the foundation of this country that want to keep their businesses here. What we're doing, not we, what the government is doing, they're chasing those businesses away. What we need to do is foster the climate, restore consistency and predictability through less government regulation. That includes liberal extremism, which touches, you can't make any expansion to your manufacturing plant for fear of, some stopping the construction because of some extreme opposition. That, in my opinion, is one of the biggest problems to growing business here on our shores. And we really need to address that and also have consistency in just the application of regulations.
Thank you. Leo, government seems to be getting bigger and bigger all the time. Is that better? Yeah. Government seems to be getting bigger all the time. Are there any agencies or departments you would cut? Why? We have a rebuttal to the opening.
Are we allowed to answer those questions or not?
I'm going to give each of you a unique question in the major category. We're on the economy now. Pardon? You're welcome to if you want to exercise a rebuttal. You're allowed 2 for the debate.
I get 2 rebuttals. Why not use 1 right now?
Go for it.
I just want to say one thing you have to understand about China. When you talk about why are jobs going over there, what is it? What is it that China has that, well, why we send jobs over there? Who knows? It's cheap labor that we cannot compete with, and there's not any policies that we're going to be able to put in place because no one in this country is going to work for that type of labor. It's got to be a free market system. You have to understand that some of those jobs are going to go there. We cannot compete that. That's like India. Every time you get on the phone, who are you talking to? They pay those people under $1 an hour. You're never going to be able to create an economy here where you're going to be able to have people call and do that. So it has to be a free market. We have to be able to do other things. We have to have strengths in other areas because you will never compete with that labor. You ever watch Shark Tank, the show on TV? What's the first thing those wealthy guys always say? Have you thought about manufacturing it in China? Because you can do it for a fraction of the cost.
Thank you. Now, Lisa, the rules allow you a 30-second reply if you want one. Yeah, that's fine if you would like to.
So, okay, so 30 seconds to reply. I actually agree with Jeff. I don't think he rebutted what I said. I think he just added to it.
I wasn't.
Yeah, and so I completely agree. What we need to be fostering or concentrating with respect to what Jeff said is encouraging our human capital. I mean, it's not the lowest paid wage earners. We shouldn't be trying to compete with, companies that are going over. I think I'm going in and out. We should be trying to compete at every level. However, as Jeff points out, we can't compete with, little to no wage earners. What we should be doing is focusing on our human capital, which is, people that are starting companies and growing their businesses.
Thank you. Leah, we were speaking about government's ever-increasing size. Are there any agencies or departments at the federal level you would cut? Are there any you would create? Which ones and why?
Well, I've said before in other events that I am a supporter of 2 budgets that have come out. I'm in support of synergizing 2 budgets, the Rand Paul budget and the Paul Ryan budget. I think there are elements there that are very good. In Rand Paul's budget, he does call for cuts in certain agencies, and in sort of flippant red meat politics, I have been guilty of throwing out, oh yeah, let's cut EPA or let's cut this out or the other thing out. And I'm sort of reluctant to do that tonight, except I do want to say that there's one, of course the typical agencies we all agree on, Department of Education can and should be devolved to the state level. I think that that's a possibility. One creative idea that I think we should think about is the Department of Homeland Security. I think in many ways the Department of Homeland Security is enormous, and it's served more to muddy the waters in terms of what individual intelligence and law enforcement agencies do. And it's created an environment whereby agencies that, for example, in my former profession, I was charged with collecting intelligence. Now you have all kinds of disparate agencies engaged in that type of operation. It becomes a bit of a clown show when that happens. And I'd like to see a little bit more of efficiency in the intelligence sector, in my case, and that would involve maybe restructuring and maybe abolishing Homeland Security.
Yay.
No rebuttals, right? Travis, at the end of this year, all of the Bush-Obama tax cuts expire. Taxes on everyone go up. Please make the case for why this is a bad idea if you think it is a bad idea. And would you accept a deal to keep tax cuts for everyone except at the highest marginal income rates?
Thanks. I'm going to start with a rebuttal. They're not Bush tax cuts. The reality is, if we increase the tax rate today, it's an Obama tax increase. This preconceived notion that we have this set baseline of what we're supposed to pay in this country in the 40% or the high 30s is false. The whole phrase Bush tax cuts is actually quite ridiculous in my opinion. It's a ploy by the media to make us think that you're a Republican if you're for lower taxes and you're only a Democrat if you're for higher taxes. I would absolutely support the complete disregard of raising taxes on the American people right now. You know, small business owners in this country pay the highest corporate income tax in the entire world. The entire world. And that is not helping us create more jobs. You know, the first question that was asked, how do we keep jobs in America? We stop punishing our job creators for creating jobs in this country. And I have to say, there's much better ways to cut spending levels in this country and increase revenue to the federal government. And I would say we abolish the Department of Education, the Department of Energy. How about the Bureau of Indian Affairs under the U.S. Department of Interior? You know, there is a situation where we have quite honestly ruined an entire generation of Native Americans in this country because we keep them distant from our civilization, from our economy. Those are the types of ideas we need to take to Washington to actually start to make changes, structural changes in how money is spent in this country.
Thank you. Vernon, tomorrow, hopefully, Obamacare will be held unconstitutional. Republicans need to have a health care plan. What's yours?
Well, let me just say, Obamacare is a threat. When it was first enacted, it was, I guess, forecasted to cost $892 billion over a 10-year period. Now the CBO has said that it's $1.76 trillion. I have something very special about healthcare. My wife, she was diagnosed with third-stage breast cancer, and we couldn't afford the health coverage, and I had to go to a catastrophic healthcare. And even when that did occur, I do not believe that government should be involved. Can you imagine if you could only buy car insurance in the state of Arizona? The premiums would be outrageous. We should be able to buy health care coverage across state lines. And never before in American history have we had a government tell a small business that if you hire more than 50 people and they work more than 39 hours per week, that you will be penalized. Okay, so if you have 55 employees, guess what? You will fire 6 of them. Never before have we had that happen. And so we must bring freedom back and get rid of this abominable health care coverage called Obamacare.
Energy independence, Martin. We've been speaking about it since the 1970s, if not before. What's your plan for it? And shorter term, can we do anything about gas prices, and what?
Yes, we can. Gas prices. It's a function of the world economy, the world market energy, especially when we get about 15% of our oil from the Persian Gulf, very volatile. We never know where this price is going to go. But there's a model in place right now in Bismarck, North Dakota. Big oil shale has been found there. And you know, they can extract probably 15% with the technology today. But the reality is this. That deposit's got 900 billion barrels of reserves. It's the estimate. The Persian Gulf has got 730 or 50 billion barrels that we know about. So the technology isn't here yet, but looking at where it could be with this oil shale and different technologies that we have our arms on right now, the possibility of starting to get rid of the dependence on Middle Eastern foreign oil. The other thing is they're looking at pushing the regulations to the state level, the EPA regulations. Surf fracking, there's some issues with that, but there's going to be energy or clean air, clean water policies that we're not going to get away from. We shouldn't. But what that does with exploration production, it creates jobs right now, capital investment right now. When those oil fields are refined, now you have more production, more jobs, less dependent. So it's a 2-for-1. We could talk about the Keystone XL pipeline. It's ready to go. But again, the permits are getting in the way. So we start looking at production, exploration and production in the United States. We're going to get away from the dependence on the volatile region in the Middle East, and we create jobs and capital investment now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, if there were a large company in Arizona that was about to go bankrupt, and maybe we put out 5,000 people would be unemployed if it went bankrupt, but it could save those jobs if it could get a loan from the federal government or a bailout. Are there any conditions under which you would vote for or support such a bailout or a loan?
Certainly. I mean, you're throwing any condition out there. Sure, there are conditions. But am I for bailouts? Absolutely not. I'm one of the few people that when we did the automobile bailout, I watched all of it on C-SPAN. Anybody in this room watch every day of it? I did. And after they went through it, if you watched that, it was the big three that were there, plus it was the unions, plus they invited a professor of economics from the University of Maryland, Dr. Peter Ritchie. At the end, they turned to him and said, "What do you think? What should we do?" And he said, "I think that you should make them all go through organized bankruptcy. Don't give them any money. Make them renegotiate their contracts with the union. And they'll be profitable because they make a good product. But they can't be profitable and compete with their rich contracts with the union." Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, Barack Obama, we could never do that to this the backbone of our country. They turned around and gave them $34 billion. Ford didn't take it. $34 billion. 3 months later, they went through all the money. They went through structured bankruptcy. But Barack Obama said, "All of you loyal bondholders, you're out. Union people, you're in. We're going to make you part owners." So conditions are big. You can make any conditions you want. It's the free enterprise system. If we make good decisions, we're entitled to the fruits of our labor. If we make bad decisions, then we have to face the consequences. This country was founded on freedom and opportunity. It was not founded on entitlements. And remember, when the government gives you money, that's your money. That's my money. It's not the government's money they're given. And we've given too much.
Thank you. No rebuttals before we move into Homeland Security? Excellent. Excellent. We'll go down the list again, the line again. Lisa, we'll start with you. Talking about illegal immigration. Would you support providing adult illegal immigrants with a multi-year path to citizenship? And if so, what would those requirements be?
I get to go first on all the good ones, the whole day. This is a good one, actually. I think that we should develop, I'll call it a marathon to citizenship for illegal immigrants. I think there is a way to require or to provide a program to get those hardworking individuals that we want here in our country, that show a vested interest and a dedication to working toward the goal of citizenship. There is and this would require far more study and investigation by people far more knowledgeable on the overall subject. But my team would look at putting together the Marathon to Citizenship, where people work and they make, once they can show that they've perhaps raised $100,000 and they can invest and they're paying taxes on that money, or the taxes are being withheld on that money, then perhaps they get a visa that would allow them to stay in the country and continue to work. So I do think, and these are just very general ideas, but I do think that there is an approach, especially when it comes to people that are getting graduate level degrees at our universities, and we're sending them back to their countries to start their businesses and go further and be successful. I mean, in my opinion, that's, in addition to a Marathon to Citizenship type program, I would be an advocate for people with obtaining graduate level degrees at our high level universities, giving them a green card to stay here. Let them add to our human capital.
Great. Any rebuttals on that question? Great. Tomorrow we also may get the constitutional or unconstitutional ruling on SB 1070 out of Arizona. Your views on SB 1070, and then more expansively, it's been said in other states like California that hard lines against illegal immigration, like SB 1070, have ruined the Republican Party in those states. Do you believe that's true for Arizona? Do you believe that's true for the Republican Party nationally when it talks about illegal immigration?
Well, I think the ruling, hopefully tomorrow, is about states' rights. It's not about the merits of, in my view, about the merits of SB 1070. And I think it's important to note that SB 1070 was a reaction by a state that's essentially our state, ground zero in the troubles and the cost of illegal immigration. And that reaction was to a federal government that was ignoring the problem and not doing its job. And so in that context, I think it's a very different thing for a state in the Midwest to enact a policy like ours. So I mean, I think it's appropriate, absolutely, that we passed it. But I don't think it's a solution by any stretch of the imagination. It's just evidence of a big problem. And so I think from this point forward, whether it's upheld or not, and I believe it will be, we have to demand that the federal government do its part and gain the trust of both sides of the extremes of the issue, and begin actually reaching some sort of consensus on how we're going to deal with the problem at hand after we've managed to credibly secure our border. Because if we don't actually secure it, we're going to have a repeat of 1986 with the Immigration Reform and Control Act, which actually did absolutely nothing to mitigate the ongoing flows of illegal immigrants coming into this country. And I think it's a national security issue that needs to be addressed in that context primarily.
Travis, speaking of that, taking it from there, should we deploy military on our southern border? If so, what should that rule be?
Absolutely. I'm a member of the National Guard, and I even say it on my website. I would continue to serve in that capacity, voting to send those members of the National Guard that can defend our border to our border. I mean, that's their charter. That's what our military does. We have so much violent crime coming across that border, we have to do something. And, we secure the borders between North and South Korea with tens of thousands of troops at times. Why can't we secure our own borders?
Yeah.
So I would absolutely support. Thank you. I would absolutely support putting our National Guard on the border, northern and southern borders of our nation.
Thank you.
I'd like to rebut myself.
Sure.
Because I realize I didn't answer the entirety of your question, and I want to just add, in terms of the perceptions that others may have of the Republican Party as a result of 1070 and our positions on immigration, this is coming from a desire to win the Hispanic vote. And so as someone who's Hispanic, I think it's appropriate for me to say that Hispanics aren't one-issue voters, and we don't wake up in the morning thinking about immigration issues. I think we, more than not, wake up in the morning thinking about, the economy. And so, yes, there's been demagoguery on either side of the issue, and you're going to always have that on every, in every circumstance. But, I think that at the end of the day, immigrants, illegal or not, come to the United States because we have transparent institutions. We have a rule of law, and we are a country of opportunity. And I think that if we throw away our immigration laws, then we lose that sort of attractiveness of our country, because we're just an open border country where anything goes. So I think that we, out of respect for our sovereignty, Hispanics and others will agree that upholding our laws is the appropriate thing to do.
Thank you. Vernon, we spoke about the adults who were illegal immigrants. Let's speak about the children who came here irrespective of their will, that came here because of their parents. Would you support legislation that would grant them immunity, that would grant them amnesty, such as the kind of thing the president signed an executive order on were to come up for a vote in Congress?
No. And here's the reason. We cannot pick and choose which laws we enforce, okay? We are a country of laws. What if today I said, I don't like red lights, so I'm going to go through the red light? That wouldn't work well. We have a president who had a Congress. He had the House. He had the Senate. Had he wanted to implement meaningful change, quote, that just reminds me, change. The American people have been shortchanged over the last 3 years. I'll tell you that. But had he really wanted to address the topic, he could have. To me, what the president did was just wrong. It was just wrong. He thumbed his nose at the American people. He thumbed his nose at Congress. And all he had to do is say, I will not play politics. Because that's what he's doing. Every poll now says, well, President Obama is doing so much better among Hispanic voters. It's not about race. It's about the rule of law.
Yeah.
But would you support a vote to change that law with regard to the children of illegal immigrants?
I guess I don't understand the question. I thought
Sure.
I said no.
Okay. I understood that, and I apologize. Thank you. Let me turn to another. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Certainly what Obama did in his, with his Dreamer by Fiat declaration the other day was unconstitutional, and it was the improper way of approaching this issue. But the complexities of this issue, as we debate them, we can't forget that there is a human element to it. And while I don't support anything that that allows for chain migration, I think there were thoughtful conservatives in the Senate, including Senator Marco Rubio, who is coming up with a way to address this very human problem. It's a difficult one, without it becoming an amnesty, without allowing for chain migration. And I think that therein lies the big problem. There are so many elements that need to be addressed in this problem. So the first thing we need to do is address the border security, and then address the rest of the issue as a public policy issue, and not as a political issue during an election year at the 11th hour to try to gain votes. But I do think there's room for a discussion by good human beings about this particular question.
Thank you. I want to switch to another element of, you do if you want to. Go ahead.
Very well said.
Martin, switching to another element of our national homeland security, how big a threat is the Muslim Brotherhood here in America? And if you were put on the Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives, what kinds of hearings would you hold with regard to the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood here in America?
Okay, so to answer your question, how big is a threat of the Muslim Brotherhood? They represent a vast terrorist network. I've been in the Middle East. I've actually been in combat operations where these guys are represented in Syria, or coming from Syria. Okay, I don't think we know. I don't think we know. Anybody says they do know, I think is probably not telling the truth. The reality is there is radical Islam alive and well. I'm not sure if 20% come across the Mexican border and all that I've heard, but we need to take that serious. As far as being someone on the Homeland Security, what was the committee?
Yeah, Committee for
Yeah,
Homeland Security.
You dig real deep, but the reality is this. Those are very important questions we have to have answered for the American people, but guess what? You don't play them on TV. The biggest frustration I had looking about the secret mission to get bin Laden, guess what? It's a secret mission. Butt out. All these people, elected officials and the media demanding to know how it went down, that's not their job. I've been in the military for 30 years. I hold a top secret clearance. It's compartmentalized, a little bit beyond it if I need to have it. What bothers me is military operations are just that. They're not public operations. I've been in the Special Operations Command for about 10 years. We do a lot of that stuff, okay? And we have to do that. But we have to ask tough questions as elected officials. As citizens, we need to demand that those officials know what they're talking about. But we cannot have that debate publicly. We can't have that publicly. And that's where experience comes in. Military experience in this case actually dealt with those on the ground. That's helpful. I guarantee you, no one's going to BS me on which way the wind's blowing with these terrorist groups that I've actually been in combat with. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Vernon first.
Sorry about that. I think we do know. I think we do know that that it poses a huge threat. This morning I was on YouTube and I saw the new president of Egypt. Guess what he said? He said, sorry to turn my back to you guys, but he said that our capital shall be Jerusalem, Allah willing. That's frightening. And so I think we have to stand. We have to say that this poses a significant threat. And we cannot turn a blind eye. We must stand strong with Israel. We must stand strong and say that, Barack Obama, your foreign policy has failed. We have someone now in Egypt who is calling. Instead of having the American embassy there, he's going to move his there. So we have to do all that we can to protect the freedom of Israel. And I think that, well, stop.
Yeah. I want to use the then I'll let you respond to both of them if they want. I'll give you double the time for that.
Sure. You know, well said, Vernon, and I got to tell you this. Serving in the military, and I too hold a top secret security clearance, which I got to tell you, you don't have to have a top secret security clearance to understand that there's two things in the world that those people want. They want you dead, and they want you dead after you're dead. That's it. And to think that radical Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood are not one and the same and are not a threat to this nation and to freedom around the world is, quite honestly, I think, borderline insane. You know, these are the people who knocked down the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. That wasn't that long ago. These people come to the negotiating table with a bomb strapped to their vest. It's a threat, it's real, and we better deal with it like it's real. And I'll end with this. Not only did the new elected leader of Egypt say that, he also received a congratulatory call from President Obama.
Yeah, go ahead, Martin, and I'll just ask our timekeeper to allow you to.
Okay, I guess the first question I've got, who was the first president to meet with the Muslim Brotherhood? Anybody know that? President Eisenhower. We've known about the Muslim Brotherhood for quite some time. Okay, it's an organization that's become more radicalized, just like Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, which is a bunch of terrorist groups. Okay, so I don't want to downplay the threat because it's a big threat. I've been there. I've been on the Syrian border. I've seen these people come across. We did some pretty bad things to them because we should have. Okay, it's always going to be a concern. With respect to Israel, look, I've been in the Middle East for the better part of the last 10 years. From Baghdad to the Syrian border. They are our #1 ally in that region. I support Israel. It's been said differently, but I'm going to say it right now. I support Israel. I'm a senior naval officer. I deal in the Special Operations Command. We understand the dynamics of the Middle East. No one is going to say that we're not going to support Israel. That's the thing to do. But I don't want to get into a situation where, well, gee, this group's worse than that group. We don't know. Those are very high national security issues. We're going to bear down on those things and take the appropriate action before we can have another World Trade Tower debacle. We shouldn't have that. But the reality is the Muslim Brotherhood isn't new. Terrorism is here to stay. We need to be able to combat that, but it should not be done in public. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, we're all traveling a lot this summer. We're all sick and tired, I think, of the presumptuousness as well as the presumptions at these TSA lines, security lines at the airports. What legislation might you propose to streamline air travel security here and keep us safe? Or is what we have now the new normal?
Well, everyone got the comment, but me,
I'm sorry?
about Egypt.
They used their rebuttal cards. You're welcome to do that.
It's been a while since you've heard me talk. The world just became more of a dangerous place this morning. And I'm not going to repeat a lot of what was said. But Mohammed Morsi has made it clear for 10 years that he's not a friend of the United States and he's an arch enemy of Israel. We know that. Now the key is what's going to happen. What are we going to do? Because I'll tell you what, Iran just got another partner this morning. And we know Iran is developing nuclear. And we know why. And Barack Obama, I have to ask myself how anyone voted for him. And I'm going to point at the audience right now. 86% of the Jewish population in this country voted for Barack Obama in the last election. And I'm asking you right now, not to argue, but I'm asking you to reach out to your friends, and I mean across this entire country, and start to have dialogue. We cannot allow this man to get reelected. He's a dangerous man. Now, what was the question?
I think what we'll do is we'll count that as your rebuttal, as having used a rebuttal.
That's my rebuttal.
Okay.
Lisa's lending me her rebuttal. May I?
Yes.
No, you're out. You've had two.
Yeah, Lisa's giving me hers.
So we're breaking the rules now, so that's fine. I'm going to break them too.
You started by not answering my question, so have a seat.
We need to be really careful about conflating. We need to be really careful about conflating
the Muslim Brotherhood with Iran, and really this is such it's a big opportunity for us. We have Sunni Islamism, and we have this axis that we have with Syria, the current regime in Syria, Hezbollah, and and Hamas, and sadly Iraq now. And what we see now with the rise of the Sunni Islamism, absent Israel and the United States, they hate each other a lot. With us in the middle, they become friends against us. So, you know, we need to be really careful about understanding the complexities of the region and not conflating, you know, Sunnis with Shias, Arabs with the Iranians. Are very different approaches, and they are arch enemies, and they are going at it themselves. Hence this Arab Spring. That's what that is. If you look at what's going on in Syria, it's Sunni Islamism against Shia. So be careful about that.
Thank you. We get some time on that question.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question I asked.
I'm going to, but I would just say that Iran just picked up an ally. Don't think for a minute they did not. Okay. Question was about...
Have you ever thought about TSA security,
TSA.
airport security, and what would be your plans to change
I think there's
it?
one or
what
two,
we'll do is just give
there's
you 30,
one or two airports right
we'll
now.
Excuse me. We'll just give you 30 seconds on this.
They have starting now. They have one or two airports where they've privatized TSA. They're much more efficient. They catch much more. It's San Francisco and I believe Denver. The cost is relatively the same according to the CBO and Homeland Security. But any time you can take anything out of the hands of the government, it's going to be more efficient. So absolutely, we need to take the TSA and privatize it. It only makes sense. We need to take almost everything we can take away from the government and reduce the size of it down to a manageable amount. That was quick and an easy one.
We did economy and homeland security. Before we go on to foreign affairs generally, I thought we'd take this moment to kind of do a seventh inning stretch with lightning round questions. So each participant will answer yes or no to the same question, except for the last one, which you'll see. Do you believe in term limits for Congress? Each of you can have a yes or no on this. Lightning round.
I'm gonna say no. No.
No.
Nope. Yes, the current system hasn't worked.
Absolutely. Yes.
We can run it back this way on the next question, which is, should all Americans pay some amount of income tax?
Remember, we're taxed 47 different ways, not just income tax.
Yes or no?
So everyone's paying a lot of tax. Yes, I think a fair or flat tax makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Final lightning round question before we move on to foreign affairs. Taking away the easy answer of Ronald Reagan, or the obvious answer of Ronald Reagan, what Republican or conservative leader, alive or in the past, do you look to as a role model or as an intellectual model? And it doesn't have to be yes or no, it can be a full name.
Abraham Lincoln.
Paul Ryan.
Barry Goldwater.
Ronald Reagan. Repeat the question.
Yeah, repeat the question.
Republican or conservative you look to as a role model or intellectual role model?
John Rhodes.
I would have to say Barry Goldwater.
Thank you, folks. We'll move to foreign affairs more generally now. And we'll start with you, Lisa. Legislation has been proposed to take away the waiver the president has right now on moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Do you support taking that prerogative from the president? And would you vote to support moving, again, the embassy to Jerusalem?
At this point, I don't support taking the waiver away. Again, this is something I would have to investigate. This is one of those issues I really want to do some further study and think a little more clearly through this before I committed to an answer. But at first blush, I would say I wouldn't support, based on what I know, taking that privilege away.
Okay. Any rebuttals on that? Yes, sir.
The United States does not recognize Jerusalem and Israel's right to put an embassy there. The embassy currently sits where? In Tel Aviv. And under no circumstance should a United States president be telling the country of Israel that it cannot recognize its own capital city, which is virtually what we're doing. You know, you have a situation where at the Western Wall, you know, we have a president and an administration referring to that part of the city as a settlement. I mean, think about that. So not only should any one of us support that embassy going to Jerusalem, we should have a loud voice, a unified voice, quite honestly, across party lines, Republican or Democrat, calling for that today.
Thank you.
Part and parcel what Travis said. When the Prime Minister of Israel came and addressed the joint session of the Congress, he made some things that were very clear in my mind, maybe the military part of me, but he said this. He doesn't need the United States permission or everybody else's permission to defend and protect Israel. You know, and that's resounding. He probably meant that to our President Obama, but the bottom line is he reiterated that. He can defend himself. That's his right. That's his job as the Prime Minister. But more importantly on this question, no president should have that kind of authority. If they have that discussion, again, telling another country what they should or shouldn't do, it's got to go before the entire Congress. It's got to be a very public debate to really bring out these skeletons, wherever they are, because there's something not right about a president of this country, any country, telling another president what he can and can't do with respect to his embassy in this case. It's not right. If I'm in Congress, we're going to have a full discussion on how the president thinks he has that authority, and probably other authorities too with these czars, but hopefully that'll be another time for that question. Thank you.
Leah, the President has issued his plans to wrap up and wind down our efforts in Afghanistan. Is that the right thing to do? Do you support withdrawal from Afghanistan? And if not, right now, what is your definition of success?
I do support withdrawing from Afghanistan, at least the large military footprint that we currently have there. I don't believe that it's in our national interest to engage in nation building there. And you know, I've heard other people here say that we're fighting them there because otherwise they'll come fight us here. I mean, let's be clear. 9/11 was planned in an apartment in Hamburg, so we're much better. It's a much wiser move for us to engage in very robust intelligence operations, which have been very successful at getting at these terrorists, than you know, spending our time and treasure and blood in building a country that, when we leave, is not going to be able to maintain the institutions we've been building for them. And I know this. My husband's there right now. He's engaged with a lot of the justice and governance transfers of the prison transfer from us to the Afghanis, and I don't want to attribute anything to him because he's there officially. But let's just say we have very sort of resigned Skype conversations about it. It is not something that we're going to solve for the Afghan people, and I don't think it's in our interest to continue being there. We should refocus and redouble our efforts on robust intelligence and special forces operations to find the real terrorists that are actually out there, and not trying to rebuild Afghanistan.
Travis, do you yes, Mark, rebuttal?
Yeah. It's not so much rebuttal as this. I was in Afghanistan. The combat operations are over. They're called kinetic operations. It's over. We are nation building. This past week we lost the 2,000. We had 2,000 casualties in Afghanistan. A young Marine. Those people, those Marines and soldiers, sailors, airmen, they're going out right now to do nation building. Some border protection stuff, some governance, rule of law stuff, but it's not a combat operation. And to have our troops in harm's way when we're no longer in combat, fighting whatever we're fighting, quite frankly, it's the people you live with in these villages. You don't know who's Taliban, who's not. It's not the right thing to do. This war, so far as cost, Iraq and Afghanistan combined are somewhere between 1.4 and 4.4 trillion dollars. Too much. We're not in combat operations. The most successful terrorist hits, our side, good guys versus bad guys, it's Special Operations Command. We don't need 100,000 U.S. troops there to complement a cadre of 140,000 overall troops. We're the burden of the troops there. We don't need to put our guys in harm's way. We're not in combat operations.
Travis, do you support a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine side by side? And if so, should that come from the West Bank?
I don't see how you can successfully negotiate with a terrorist state, which is effectively what the Palestinian Authority is. So, you know, it's a question of history. You look back and look what Israel gave up. Look what happened, pre-1949, when, you know, they gave up land, and they basically hold a piece of paper now, quite honestly, that they're starting to find out is probably worthless. At least it sure sounds that way. It sounds like our federal government, a lot of our leaders feel that way about it. I got to say, I defend Israel's right to defend itself from terrorism.
Thank you. Yep. Any disagreements on that or rebuttals? Or okay. Vernon, if Israel were to take a preemptive military strike to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, what, if anything, should the U.S. response be? What speech would you give on the floor of the House of Representatives if that were to happen?
Well, let me just say this. It is not our role to tell Israel not to defend itself. And I would support any effort in Israel to take out a nuclear facility. And I think Bibi Netanyahu, he said it the best when he said, if the Arabs lay down their arms, there will be no more war. But if Israel lays down its weapons, there will be no more Israel.
Yeah.
Martin, if Iran were to announce that it had reached a nuclear military capability, and you were part of a congressional delegation called in by the President of the United States to advise him on what to do about that announcement, what would your advice be?
I think we crank up the sanctions. We can seal the Persian Gulf. That's their only lifeblood outside right now. The sanctions are working. I don't really care for President Obama, but President Obama and this Congress, Republicans and Democrats, several years ago, initiated sanctions. They're working. Israel's unemployment, well, we can talk about that. Israel's unemployment right now is less than 6%. Iran's is over 15%. Those sanctions are working. But if we know they have a nuclear device, then you know what? All bets are off. We've said not to do that. We, the world community, not just the United States, we seal the Persian Gulf. We can do that. Is that an act of war? Yes. But short of striking Iran with U.S. forces, which I would demand in Congress, we'd have to declare an act of war. I mean, it's a War Powers Act. I don't like it. The president, any president says, hey, we can go to this country, that country, and invade. That's not what our Congress, that's not what the Constitution says. Our Congress is responsible for declaring war, not the President of the United States. But short of that, if we know that they have a nuclear weapon, or they're nuclear capable, then we take the next step. We seal off the Persian Gulf. Then the next step is theirs. What are they going to do about it? You know, the Iranian threat is this. 8 frigates. They're a coastal navy. Okay, we've got a group called the 5th Fleet in Bahrain. One of our modern cruisers is capable of taking on all their boats, coastal and their frigates. We actually sold them some of those frigates too, they're old frigates. Okay, so they are a threat if they continue this nuclear enrichment program. Once we find that out, then we seal them off. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebuttals?
I would like to just say that
Let me do this, Jeff. Let me give you a question, and I'll let you incorporate it into this answer, because I think it'll work nicely. I was going to ask you, if you size up our foreign and defense policy over the last 3 years, what has President Obama and Secretary Clinton gotten right, and what have they gotten most wrong?
I have 90 seconds.
Well, you used your rebuttals, so I think we have to stick to that.
You used more than me, though.
I don't think so.
I used mine too early.
Am I wrong about that? I'm sorry.
Vernon has 1, and Leah,
So let's get a comprehensive review. What do we have now?
we have 1 rebuttals left.
Yeah.
One is for Vernon and 1 is for Lisa.
Lisa and Vernon are the only ones with a rebuttal left. So I'll let you take your 90 seconds and do what you want with it.
Okay, thank you. think Netanyahu is a bright man, and I think he knows that President Obama really has self-serving interests. Not about Israel. Israel continues to be patient. I'm surprised. It wouldn't surprise me if very shortly they strike Iran. These nuclear facilities continue to be put underground. I think as a president, we need to offer our bunker-busting missiles to them immediately. How long are you going to wait? Are you going to wait, like the prior question, till they have nuclear capability? That's too late. That is too late. You're right, the sanctions have worked. They're crippling. For them to be relevant, they need a nuclear weapon. They have a madman that's running their country, and I would just think that if he gets a nuclear weapon, Israel can't wait that long. Israel has been beaten up and battered through the years. They're not stupid. They're not going to wait that long. And I'm telling you, I think the sand has just about run through the hourglass for them. And it wouldn't surprise me if they struck very quickly. I would be supportive of them. They're a great ally of ours, and I think we need to offer them technology to make sure that their strike works. We've spent way too much money with foreign affairs. To answer your question, it's been very ineffective. It's bankrupting our country. The Egypt Spring. Please, someone tell me, what was Obama thinking when he supported that Egypt Spring? What was he thinking? Because I think just about everything that's going to come from that is bad for Israel and the American people, and probably the world in general. The price of oil could go very high. Egypt is troublesome right now. And Israel's got some Islamic nations around them that they're nervous. They're very nervous. So, hope that answers your question.
Thank you. What we'll do now, we'll dispense with the worldview questions that we had, which were a potpourri of questions. And what we'll do is we'll just take questions from the audience. And we'll ask the timekeeper to, we'll ask the questioners to direct it to a single person, to a single candidate. We'll allow a rebuttal. Each one gets one rebuttal. And we'll do that for the next several minutes. Go ahead, any questions? Raise of hands on anything for one of these candidates. Now, I can't see everyone, so just do me a favor. The second man, yeah, put up two, yeah, you know who you are.
Okay, my question is for Mr. Grantham.
Yes, sir.
Earlier stated, sir, and the other candidates with one exception also stated, that we know that Iran is acquiring a nuclear weapon. I find that interesting. Because in 2007, and again in 2011, all 16 intelligence services in the United States said that they weren't. Now, we don't know this. Iran signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Pact, which allows her to have a nuclear program. All the other nations in the area, all the other ones, didn't sign it and have, frankly, nuclear weapons based on malfeasance. What was done to them? Why is Iran different?
Iran's different because it's run by a brutal dictator, and it's been an out-of-control regime.
The dictator was elected. The real.
So was Saddam Hussein, right?
No, the real ruler of Iran is the clergy. Okay? Ahmadinejad is a puppet. He's leaving.
Right.
He's had differences with the clergy. Who has Iran attacked? This mad regime, who have they attacked since they've been in effect since 1979? We had somebody attack them, but they have never attacked anybody.
Hezbollah and Hamas.
We're probably going to have, I'll tell you, just on some things, we're probably going to have to agree to disagree. Now, I'm going to answer the question, though, and that is...
16 intelligence agencies.
16 intelligence. I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with that stat. But I can tell you this, as much as I can tell you. I was there in November. I was there for the whole month. I flew sorties out of Doha. And I flew on every side of that country. And I sat through a 1-hour-long intelligence briefing every day before I did it. And we know things that are not reported in this news today. We know things about Iran that nobody in this room knows. Our listening capability knows it. Our photographing capability knows it. And our people inside of that country know it, believe it or not.
Right.
And that's all I'll really say about it.
And as somebody who was in naval intelligence for 6 years,
Yep.
your intelligence
All right.
was passed on to Washington.
No.
wasn't it?
You asked a question. Really, I want to
I'll be honest
maximize
with
the
you.
ability for other audience members to do that.
I'm just the receiver. I don't pass it.
Okay. Right? Yeah, I'll let you take a rebuttal, and then we'll go. You can just keep the microphone here. That's fine.
Okay, so with that, who is Iran attacked? Have you heard of Al-Qud?
Who has
Please do let the candidates
answer.
answer.
The question. Al-Qud is their special forces group, okay? They were in Basra, southern Iraq. Al-Qud also is doing some stuff with Syria, okay? Again, we're not getting into a lot of detail here, but the bottom line is this. Their special operations group, they're alive and well. There's this Revolutionary Guard. They do freelance things as well. We saw them in Basra, southern Iraq, when I was there in 08, 09. They're part of that mix down there with a group called Muqtada al-Sadr. Okay, so they're alive and well. They're on the border with Afghanistan as well. They've got some nefarious characters there. But the bottom line is this. They have stated they want to wipe out the state of Israel. We can't let that happen. They're also sworn enemies of the United States, this regime. Until we get rid of this regime, maybe with this 15++ unemployment, that'll help them. But until that goes away, they are a threat. And they have attacked U.S. forces, NATO forces, and other people in the Middle East, to include
the country of Iran has attacked.
All right, that's enough. Come on, you don't get 4 questions. You get 1. Right behind you, the gentleman right behind you. Yes, sir. And you just broadcast it, I'll repeat it. We'll keep the mic up there.
Can the candidates indicate by show of hands who has not signed the Grover Norquist no tax pledge?
Has any candidate here not signed?
And if they haven't, why haven't?
Yeah, has any candidate here not signed the anti-tax pledge?
I have not. I've got 8 years of public record on the Chandler City Council, balanced every budget, had cash reserve, lower taxes. I've got a public record that says I'm going to do. I don't believe in pledges. And a lot of people make pledges, but my pledge is not to raise taxes, plain and simple. I've got a public record that says I have not raised taxes. Balanced budgets, cash reserves, lower taxes.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone else not signed it?
Yeah, I didn't sign it. I'm not going to sign it, not because I don't believe in the premise of the organization. I do. I think that that raising taxes is anti-growth, and if I go to Congress, I'm going to enact pro-growth policies, including not voting to raise taxes. But having said that, I like to be clear that I think that, or that I know that my oath is to the Constitution, and my pledge would be to the people of the district, not to any lobbyists in Washington, even if I happen to agree with them.
I signed it last week.
I have not signed it because I think signing anything before you get involved and know all the details and know what's coming next. I mean, what if we had a state of emergency? What if we went to war? I mean, I'm sure you hear those questions all the time, and you might have answers to them. But it's more of a gimmick, I think, at this point, a candidate to sign that. Not knowing, no offense, Travis, but getting into, I don't want to raise taxes. I vote against raising taxes at the city level regularly, and so I can run on a record of doing that actually when I'm presented with the question, okay? But signing a commitment before you get involved and know what's coming next, and there's a long future ahead of us as an elected member of Congress, and to make a decision like that at this point, I think is short-sighted.
Thank you. When I served as the mayor of Paradise Valley, it was very, very difficult times. And that's not an oxymoron for Paradise Valley in difficult times, okay? But the first thing that they told me, they said, we do not have the revenue, raise taxes. And I said, nope. And then they said, use your rainy day fund. I said, but it's not raining. And what I did was work with my council and did what was right. We ended up cutting our staff by 29%, and we cut our budget by 30%. And today, the town of Paradise Valley is a lot better off because we did it.
Yes, go ahead.
I have not signed it, but absolutely, I have no problem signing it. I do have it in my email. I just got it, I think, last week. We have a spending problem in this country. We don't have a tax problem. The government calls your taxes revenue. They want more revenue. They think if they tax the rich, they'll get it. I think this country was founded on you deserve the fruits of your own labors. We will increase revenue through economic recovery. We will increase taxes. And even though the unemployment rate's high, and that's all they talk about, I know a lot of business people in this town, and I'm telling you, a lot of them are really hurting still. And they're making way less than they were making, therefore they're paying way less in taxes than they were making. When we get economic recovery, there will be more revenue generated to the government, but we have to deal with the spending problem. To increase taxes and not cut revenue, this ship will sink and we're all going to be on it.
Thank you. Standing in the far corner back there. Yes, sir.
Brad Zinn, Western Free Press. I'd like to direct this question to Leah, and if anyone else wants to comment, that's fine.
Tell you what, since you're with the press, why don't you speak with them afterwards, and we'll just let an audience member ask one more, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Okay.
Okay, but it's going to take away from the audience. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask about human intelligence. You said you served in the CIA.
That's an oxymoron, too.
Notice they're asking her.
The doctor that supposedly led us to Osama bin Laden has been thrown under the bus. Would you assess for us how you feel human intelligence has been damaged, if it has, in the last 3 years, and what we could do to rebuild our human intelligence capability?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. Our human capabilities depend on secrecy. And, if we run an operation, let me just, give you an example of mine. I've run operations where I've been away from my husband and my family. I couldn't talk to them because I was an alias, and my husband, who has a top secret clearance himself, to this day has no idea what I was doing. So how the New York Times and the press has knowledge of this very important operation that went down in Abbottabad is it's I think close to treasonous. It's a terrible thing that has happened. And I'm really, I'm really concerned that they're snooping around looking for former intelligence officials to find out where this came from. And I'm fairly convinced that this came right out of administration officials who are just focused entirely on getting their guy elected. And this was sort of a macho move to make him look like he's a big tough guy. And in the process, as you said, threw this important asset under the bus. And that's something that we don't do as operations officers. We protect our assets at all costs. And so I think it's very tragic. I'm very saddened by this.
And that goes part and parcel with this whole problem with the media demanding to know what these special operations are all about. That's not it. It's a mission. It's a military mission. This administration and senior U.S. officials that are in the military have failed. They've failed. This is not about re-electing the president. It's about protecting those resources that we have in the field, military and civilian. The other thing is this. It also points out what a great relationship we've got with Pakistan. This administration is clueless when it comes to Central Asia or the Middle East. They're not our friends. When we give them money, they act like our friends. But there's still things that are going on right now. They're demanding to know, before we have a special operations mission goes down, where it's going to go. Okay? Some of the missions I was on in Afghanistan, reconstruction missions, not special operations missions, we had to let them know what we were doing, when we were going to be there. Guess what happens then? You get a welcoming party. Sometimes it's not so friendly. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense. There is no military mission left in Central Asia. We're rebuilding. We're putting people's lives at risk. We shouldn't be there. But again, it's a failure of leadership from the President of the United States, and I would even say those military chiefs that allowed this to happen.
Yeah, CFR.
We didn't give Pakistan advance notice that we were going in. We leaked it after the fact. Just to clarify that.
I mean, I just want to clarify that we handled it. The operation was handled correctly from its inception. We didn't advise the Pakistanis that we were encroaching in their territory to conduct this operation, and we went in and we left according to plan. The problem happened after the fact when the Obama administration.
I understand sequence of events. Yeah, I'm not saying we did. See, they can't be trusted.
Stipulated. Jeff.
Just real quick, foreign aid to Pakistan, $2 billion. When they took that doctor and put him in prison and sentenced him to 33 years, President Obama, Secretary of State Clinton, offered him another $2 billion to let him go. They sent our stealth technology and sold it to China when the helicopter crashed. And I give Rand Paul credit, because Rand Paul stepped up and said, absolutely not, give them absolutely nothing. The prior gentleman that asked the question about Israel, and Iran and their nuclear capabilities. Let me tell you something. The CIA with Israel and Assad can infiltrate any organization in the world. They might be the finest CIA in the world, and I promise you this, Netanyahu will not strike unless he has excellent information. They've infiltrated, I guarantee it. You know they've infiltrated it because they put a virus into their technology. They're in there, they know, and when they know it's time, they will strike. And I support that.
Thank you. We'll take one more question before closing statements. Yes, sir, right there. Striped shirt? Yes.
Hi. My question is that I think one of the major failing points of the Obama administration is partisan politics, the inability to compromise. It's not realistic to say that you'll have filibuster-proof, majorities in both sides and all that. So I think to move any of these agendas, it's going to take an ability to cross the aisle and work and try to build coalitions that are not always comfortable to build. I got to pick somewhere, and
just give us a question.
All right. Well, the question is I just want to, hear the candidates speak about, what is your belief in working across the aisle, and do you have any examples of, in your careers that would attest to that?
Okay.
I've got the mic.
Yeah, let's do a 15-second lightning round on that down the line.
You're taking my time.
I'm really not.
Come on, Sam. Yeah, I've sat in those boardrooms. I've made those decisions. And let me tell you, you can have a different method if you have the same motive. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. And I'm just going to tell you, you have to have the negotiating skills of allowing people to have victories and knowing what victories to give away and what victories to keep. And that takes years of experience, 25, 30 years of experience to get that. I've got that.
Martin?
Thank you. My background is the Chandler City Council. It's nonpartisan. You figure out what the goal is and you achieve that goal, irrespective of the political ideology. My priority in Congress is balanced budget amendment. That's not a partisan issue. It's an American issue. There are people that said, look, we support this thing. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, guess what? I want to get my arms around those people and make sure they're going to be good in their promise.
Thank you, Vernon.
I use my rebuttal for more than 15 seconds. Saving people. Well, it's working this way now. That's a very good question, and I will tell you this. I am endorsed by my entire town council, and that's very, very difficult. If anyone who served on a town council, they will tell you that there are fractions. When I served as the mayor, I worked with people who did not agree with me. And when I went through my United States Senate confirmation hearing, I was unanimously confirmed. And I remember it was Tom Daschle, he was the senator at the time, he asked the White House, he goes, where'd you get this guy, central casting? Because I got along with people, and once I had my position as an assistant secretary, I was very clear that I would not compromise my conservative values. So what my approach always has been is say that these are non-negotiables over here. Now let's look at things where we can work together on. And I have always had a very successful tenure in everything that I've done publicly, because the people, oddly enough, who disagree with me the most are the ones who get along with me because I'm upfront with them and let them know how things should work.
Thanks.
I think you got to look at the individual you're voting for, you're casting your vote for, and say, who do I think can work across the aisle? We all have great experience up on this stage. We've all worked with people we don't like, presumably. I mean, I'm an instructor pilot in the Air Force. I fly with folks that I don't really like, and you talk about a crucial time to get along with somebody. So I'll say this, remember, it's a representative republic. We're choosing somebody who's going to go to Washington and represent you, regardless of whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Thanks, Leah.
Yeah, I'll just say that, because it's such a large body, you have to build consensus, and the goal should be to move the ball forward. And so, there's a fine line, I think, between selling out your principles and being a consensus builder. But I believe that I'm up to the task to build consensus and push the ball forward.
Thank you. I believe it's about having conviction and doing the right thing. And if you have that as your baseline and your guiding light, the voters will see what you stand for, and as long as you keep that and take that with you, it's absolutely imperative. I think people, at least on the city council level, you ask for specific examples of how I might have demonstrated that. In Scottsdale, I don't know how many of you are from here, but we have kind of the chamber versus the no growth factions. And I'm in neither camp at all. I think I get along with both equally, and that's a huge accomplishment in Scottsdale I've learned over the last 3.5 years. And you know, being an attorney, I have just as many defense lawyer friends as I do plaintiffs, people that I've worked against and vigorously advocated for my clients. And I can go out and have lunch with them or have dinner with them. So I definitely have a record of balancing that. And I think if you have conviction and do the right thing, that you can work with people.
Thank you. We'll move to closing statements, a minute each, wrap up, and we'll let you go ahead and start right here.
I might just close on that note too. I think you know, the partisan politics have really, I think, taken just the worst turn. I think we see that more so now, and I think it's getting worse. In this election, especially in our District 9, it's a critical decision. I mean, I think, you know, make no mistake, we all know it. The other side, the Democrats, are going to come out fighting hard to take this seat, and we all need to keep our eye on that ball. So we all should be working to elect a candidate that's going to be able to compete with that. That is our primary goal. I absolutely bring my commitment and my work ethic to this position, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. I hope you heard some different viewpoints here that interest you. I just want to say that I found this debate exceedingly frustrating because I was very excited to talk about the foreign policy questions, and they're so complex, and they've been, you know, reduced to one-liners and slogans, and I had hoped to get into a lot more detail with you about some of the issues, especially in the Middle East, which concern your group in particular, and me in a big way. And so I don't know, if I have an opportunity to meet any of you one-on-one or over coffee, I'd really enjoy it, because I think these are very important issues, and they're very complex, and they can't be reduced to these sort of 30-second blurbs. So thank you very much. My website is leahforcongress.com. I'd be honored to have your support, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
I want to close just talking a little bit about CD9. We've heard it's drawn by Democrats, for Democrats in the past. It's not. You know, this district is winnable. And it's going to be won by a hard worker. Somebody who's been out there from the beginning. Somebody who's actually going out and communicating with the voters. I can tell you, on my campaign, we've knocked on over 10,000 doors so far. I've outraised every candidate on the stage because I started in January. I was the first one in this race. I'm matching what I raise. This is a very crucial district in this state. This is the Supreme Court of this state. There's going to be 9 of us going to Congress. We're going to tip it one way or the other in 9. We have to nominate somebody who can run effectively against the Democrat machine that's coming after August 28th. It was an honor and a privilege to be here today. I think it was a great group. I think it was great questions. I think it showed some stark differences. Thank you, everyone.
And I am that person who you should nominate. Just want to say this, you know, these are great folks. I mean, I am so proud because you will not be ill-served. And I just wanted to say this, I have the support of quite a few people, Jerry Colangelo, Ken Kendrick, Eric Crown, Hugh Holman, Jim Waring, Michelle Reagan. Endorsements, they don't mean that much. It's what you do. We have been working extremely hard to restore the greatness of this country, but there's one endorsement that I'm very proud of, and it says, just read it to you. It says, "Dear Vernon, I hope this helps. Please keep my assistant in the loop on how your race is going. Good luck. I am proud of you." It says that Vernon Parker is a good man who served honorably in my administration. Vernon is a leader who demonstrates conservative values, love for country, and commitment to excellence in all that he has done. His life story is the American dream. The newly created 9th District is a good fit for Vernon, and the people of Arizona would be lucky to have Vernon as their representative. I have every confidence that he will serve them well as he did in my administration. I encourage you to vote for Vernon Parker, President George H.W. Bush Sr. Well, thank you again for having us here this afternoon. We do have a very good group behind us running for this district. This is a critical district. I think it's about experience. It's about your past performance. You know, we could say this election is about the economy, but it's about people, all of us here, our family, our friends, our neighbors. How we come together as Americans and move forward to get beyond this crisis. We're all Arizonans. When problems arise, we face them head on. We identify them, stand shoulder to shoulder, and get past these problems. It's going to come down to whether or not we believe that government is best when the government is the least. Whether or not our government has gotten too big, too costly, too ineffective. We've got to make those decisions now. This election is going to be critical to that. You know, I'm proud that my roots are in this community almost 150 years. I feel grateful that I was born and raised here and raised my family here. I feel blessed that after 6 different combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, both my son and I made it home safely. I know how precious our liberty and our freedom is. I know it's worth fighting for. I've got the experience. I know how to lead, and I'm ready to serve Congress now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for coming. You're very important to me. You've heard me say that a couple times tonight. I'm in this race because of that. I'm a retired guy. I think this is a very unique time for you as voters, because typically you never get someone like me in a race like this, because successful people do not enter politics. They're making too much money and they're not going to take their time for this. Typically you get politicians. I entered this race when I saw all the people in the field were basically politicians. People that moved into this district, that don't live in this district just for political gain. And I said, I don't want that. We need someone that's been successful, that will go back there, that knows how to negotiate, that will draw a line in the sand for your benefit. And I promise you this in this room, no matter what you're thinking, you bring someone like me back there, I pledge to you, I will make this a better place for everyone. Everyone, not just divisive groups. Everyone will be served by me. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks. You want to last word? Edmund Burke, the conservative philosopher, said that above all, representatives in a representative democracy owe their judgment. I hope we got to see a window into the judgment of these fine candidates this afternoon, so I want to thank you all again for coming. Thank you all again for coming.